Vado? Ricominciamo, d'accordo. Ricominciamo con il titolo. Allora, crisi ambientali nei Balcani, integrazione europea contribuisce alla tutela ambientale del sud-est Europa. Tra i miei ospiti ci sono giornalisti della regione, intesa per sud-est Europa non soltanto i paesi che sono ancora fuori dall'allargamento, ma anche paesi che sono già membri dell'Unione Europea. Avremo quindi modo di sentire una prospettiva rumena, una bulgara e naturalmente di alcuni dei paesi che non sono nell'Unione Europea, tra cui la Bosnia, l'Albania e il Montenegro. E la Slovenia in realtà dai Paesi membri. L'obiettivo del nostro ragionamento è quello di chiedersi cosa è successo a questa normativa europea così ampia, così ricca, alla quale spesso i paesi che non sono membri dell'Unione Europea guardavano con interesse, con grande convinzione che appunto per gli ambientalisti naturalmente adottare tutta questa normativa avrebbe significativamente migliorato le condizioni ambientali dei paesi. Ed è vero che l'Unione Europea prova a fare i conti con una cosa complessa come fare sì che si protegga l'ambiente mentre si sviluppa l'economia di mercato, quindi una sfida che non è per forza così ovvia e comunque sembra averlo fatto fino ad ora meglio di buona parte del resto del mondo. Quindi è stato a lungo un punto di riferimento. Poi però negli ultimi tempi, soprattutto con l'andare dell'establiscersi della nuova commissione, ma anche appena prima la chiusura della precedente, ci sono stati parecchi segnali che l'Unione Europea in realtà, soprattutto verso i propri paesi vicini, quelli a cui aveva promesso l'integrazione europea del futuro, in realtà verso di loro l'approccio è diventato sempre più estrattivista, forse un po' coloniale. E forse l'esempio più grave è quello dell'intesa, del memorandum d'intesa sul litio tra il governo di Belgrado e l'Unione Europea, con accuse da parte delle società civili dei paesi candidati di abbandonare i principi dello Stato di diritto e la democrazia pur di accapararsi delle risorse, le materie prime dei paesi della regione. Avremo modo di parlare di questi temi con i nostri ospiti. Ci sono tanti ambiti diversi da cui guardare a questo aspetto, quindi direi che la cosa importante è lasciare subito la parola ai miei ospiti. Quindi partirei in ordine alfabetico dall'Albania e quindi a questo punto mi muovo in inglese per omogeneità, anche se naturalmente, anzi senza naturalmente, anche se Elira Kadiu sa l'italiano molto bene. To make sure that everybody else understands what I'm trying to say and how I introduce, I'll start in alphabetical order, and so Slovenia, I'm sorry, will be the last. The idea is now to give the floor to Elira, who is an Albanian journalist of Citizen Channel, who has a long experience in the field of environment, but not only, who has a degree in journalism from the University of Tirana and worked for many years already at Citizens AL. And AL, yes. Albania has been a very interesting case for civil society mobilization in favor of environment, and in particular to save the rivers, and the last wild river in the region, and which was menaced by the many economic interests inside the country and outside for the exploitation, in particular for hydropower. Yeah. So what happened to Albania, and how can we look at the developments in the recent times? Yes.
Yeah, so for the entrance, I want to thank you for the invitation and for having the opportunity to exchange experience on environmental issues. I think it's very important, at least for the region, that we meet with each other. And from the conversation we had before, we realized that our problems are not so many different. So it's a good choice to be together, to speak the challenges we are facing and to find the solution. So our solution and a way that we can face our problem is through our reporting and seeking the truth and not be faded by the propaganda of the governments that in general it works as a way for the government to make the things look different. For example, Vjosa, the less wild river, as you mentioned it before, it is declared now a national park on 13 March 2023, and it is held as one of the biggest, let's say, one of the biggest premium that our government has done to the environmental. To the environmental panorama that's happening now in Albania. And in fact, it was a very long way to achieve this status. It was a long way of activism and protest by the neighbors, but also the lobby of international organizations like Aeronature, Riverwatch, and also a lot of famous actor and protagonist of the Hollywood spoke about Vjosa, like Leonardo DiCaprio have done a lot of tweets about Vjosa, and in the end now we have a status national park, and everyone thinks that okay, it's an agreement that is signed and Vjosa is protected, but in fact what's happening on the ground, it has nothing to do what the government tries to sell to our country and to other countries. So for the moment, we have one of the most important branch of Vjosa, that is Sušica River, and there are work going on for the moment, and they are trying to take the water and to put it into pipes and to use it for water system that it will help to bring the water to different resort, touristic resort in the south of our country that are in general owned by businessmen or oligarchs. And for the moment, it's in the court, the process happening, but nothing has changed, and there are still protests going on the field, and the water that is like taking away for the moment. And in the same time, still with national park status in one very important area of Vjosa that is called Narta, that has also a protected status of 5th status. It's been constructing an airport. Also, this is a very huge case going on now in Albania. Just 2 days ago, the government did a test of an airplane landing in this airport, and they are saying that for the summer it will be used only for small planes, but from the next year it will start being used as a whole and functional airport, even that is being constructed in a protected zone that has lead to different protests, and also a lot of international organizations have spoke about that the construction should be stopped. Also, the Bern Convent that Albania is part of that has spoke 3 times officially against the airport, but still the government, let's say, didn't consider anything of this declaration, and now we are in the finalization of the airport. And this is like 2 most important challenges of the environmental issues that are happening in Albania. That it looks like in the beginning the Prime Minister said, because it was the final last river of Europe, and it was like, oh, you domesticate other river, but you want our river to keep wild, so you are telling us not to do hydro plants or other business stuff. And he said, okay, we are doing this like the final state, like the first state of Europe doing such a big step, but in the end they are still profiting in other zones, like I mentioned, the Sušica River taking the water, or the airport that is being constructed. So I think all these points that I explained are a big minus of our country to finalize with success the integration in the European Union.
Thank you very much. I think
Welcome.
thank you also for giving the time, which I haven't reminded everyone to have a few minutes so that we might have then some questions. My second guest is Aleksandar Trifunović from Bosnia-Herzegovina. Bosnia-Herzegovina is a very divided country, we all know, but we saw civil society collaborating for the protection of rivers as well, but also in general for the environment. How do you explain what is important thing that we should look at today in Bosnia?
First of all, thank you for opportunity to talk about this. Now, these days especially, when Bosnia-Herzegovina is one of the deepest crises in after Dayton Agreement. And I must explain to our colleagues, people who listen to us, that Bosnia-Herzegovina is always in crisis, but now it's much more deepened there than ever. And in this kind of political environment, that our politicians try on daily basis to promote intolerance, nationalism, different version of war. We don't have dealing with past process. Only this activism, environmental activism, show the picture of united, that citizen. This is some kind of cohesive factor that connecting people with each other really, because we can recognize in this level of corruption that domestic politics have this kind of front page of conflicts, but on the off records of this picture, domestic politicians have, for example, same investors who invest in the hydropower plants, who put our small river and destroy surrounding devastated, with fully support of politics. You have situation that politics support every bad decision against citizens, and on election, citizen vote for this politics. This is pretty strange. And we can explain this, of course, but we don't have time for that. But this level of political manipulation is impossible when we talk about a river, some mining process in the, for example, near to my town, some company, ghost company, nobody know who is owner, start to mining some big land territory and absolutely destroy for the next 100 years this land and disappear without any kind of responsibility. This is why it's important that this environmental activism can put people direct photo, video, all materials like journalists and activists can send, that this is political manipulation, and the only main reason for that is huge profit. And in the same time, domestic politicians have much more, expensive properties have outside of Bosnia-Herzegovina, not in Bosnia. Domestic politicians don't believe in Bosnia and future of Bosnia, only believe in this corruption and profit. And I must say, because the question is Europe and environmental, we talk about that today, it's some pretty strange things happening in past period. European country who usually support activism with the small and big projects, support the environmental issue, very often in past period have a dilemma to support some activism if this mining process is, for example, in direct connection with these countries. That's in that period, for example, we have high representatives, some ambassador, who criticize activists. Come on, this is good for your country. We want to invest some money, clean energy, blah blah blah. But when you start to ask questions for explanation, we usually don't have answer. That's I want to say Bosnia now is really environmental issue isn't the main topic now in Bosnia. The main topic in Bosnia is now new war. I must say that. And of course, I don't believe that can happen, but who knows? In Bosnia is everything possible. But it's important to explain political picture of our society and corruption with environmental issues. How do politics manipulate with these topics to take really, really amazing profit about this issue? Thank you.
Thank you, Aleksandar. By the way, I'm sorry I didn't say and mention that you are a journalist from Banja Luka and that you are the president of an NGO that is the Center for Informative Contamination of Youth.
Decontamination.
Decontamination, sorry.
It's the opposite.
I am already, I'm already burned. I'm sorry. And that your media is Buka. It's a very important media in Republika Srpska. Sorry, forgive me. It's a second sign of being already lost. Continuing with our alphabetical order, we've moved to Bulgaria. And we have Okay, I'll try it again. Right, Zornitsa, Lateva. Almost. Okay, you'll say it correctly then. By Mediapool, you as well are a journalist or with a long career behind, and Mediapool is a very important media in Bulgaria. What do we say about the situation there? We can have other examples of environmental problems and difficulties of managing the issue. In particular, the air pollution is certainly an issue, certainly not only in Bulgaria, but how do cities deal with this very heavy problem of air pollution that has very heavy consequences on people's life? So start from the pronunciation, please.
Thank you for trying saying my name.
I didn't really make it. Sorry.
No, you're pretty close. and thank you for the invitation. Well, I think that air pollution is a common problem, not only in Bulgaria, but in many countries all over Europe. And how cities are dealing, they are dealing pretty worse. I think in last years, because of the EU regulations and the pressure from EU, Bulgarian cities tried to tackle the problem with air pollution, mostly using European money that were invested in new public transportation or replacing old stuffs on wood and coal with more ecological ones, using pallet or air conditioning. And the problem here is that people don't want this kind of stuffs because this is not so cheap. And maybe in 5 years, because they just go and see if you use the new one, maybe in 5 years they will replace them again with the old ones, but we'll see. But the problem is that around 10,000 people in Bulgaria die every year of diseases related to air pollution. And the biggest measure the government takes is manipulating data. You can imagine Sofia is a 2 million city, and we have only a few stations monitoring the air pollution, and they're in parks or away from the traffic, and they only show fine particulate matter, the dust, and not nitro. Sorry.
So I'm not the only one with the pronunciations issues.
Well, the pollution from cars. So there are NGOs that are measuring this, but the government doesn't take their data for And in fact, there was the citizens bought some sensors, and now that is the net that people look, not the government ones. And maybe the only measures that the municipality took, it was to ban cars from city center. It is for 3 months every winter, 2 winters now, and there is no data how this affected air pollution, and there are no charges, although on paper there are. Mm-hmm. And that is a problem we we'll tackle in the next years. And the other one I wanted to talk about is another city environmental problem. It's waste management. This business is controlled by people linked to mafia and oligarchs, and they get paid for every ton of waste they transport. So there are schemes like wetting the waste or putting stones in the waste just to be heavier and to take more money. And that is maybe the biggest reason why the government postpones the principle pollutant pays, because then this waste that the oligarchs profit from will have to reduce because people would pay more for waste management and should recycle more and separate the waste. And that is something we are not doing now in Bulgaria, which sounds ridiculous in 21st century.
Yeah. If we move again, thank you very much, and we move now to Montenegro. So going up and down between member states and non-member states, and we have Milka Tadić, who works for CIN, which is a very well-known. She herself a very well-known journalist in the country, but also you define yourself as a civic activist, right? Because you've been president and journalist of the Center for Investigative Journalism of Montenegro, and you've been working a lot on these issues. So again, in the case of Montenegro, rivers have been the center of initiatives from civil society, but also a reason of concern. Milka, what's your take?
First of all, thank you very much for this great opportunity to talk to you about situation in the Balkans. And during the morning, we had discussions about situation in our countries and about the state of journalism. And we found that we are actually sharing the common problems, that we should join our efforts to fight against those who are destroying not just our nature, but our democracy as well. Behind the destruction of the nature and environment, it's always big corruption. And during the investigations which we made in decades, we found that actually the corrupted political elite is the main reason for the destruction of the nature. And not just in Montenegro and not just in the Balkans, but of course globally. The trends in the world are very challenging right now. Even the old democracy, so-called old democracy, are having some serious problems. And this is another reason why we should join our efforts and fight for the nature and for the democracy. So in Montenegro, we had actually for 30 years the same government, same corrupted government, and it was hard to make actually distinction between the politicians, the oligarchs and mafia. And in such an environment, most of our rivers, small wild rivers on the north of Montenegro, were distracted because of the small hydropower which they built on the untouched north. And those small hydropower completely destroyed those rivers. And most of the owners of the small hydropower were connected with the political elite. For example, the son of the president, for a long time president and prime minister, Milo Đukanović, who was for 33 years president or prime minister, was one of the owners of few hydropower which has been distracted our rivers on the north. And it's not just that these guys destroyed the rivers, but they got substitutes Is it okay? From the government, they had for the production of the electricity. They have been paid as well by the government. So it was a really horrible and awful corruption. But we changed this government 5 years ago, and we thought, okay, now we will start with a completely new page, and everything will be much better. But unfortunately, those who came are similar, because they are not going to change the system. They are just actually using the tools from the previous political elite to continue with destruction of the country, of the nature, of democracy, continue with the stealing, with using our resources and everything. So now they have a plan. We stopped this small hydropower plants production with the support of the EU, because EU was very much against this. And now they have the idea to build a huge hydropower on the north, on Komarnica Canyon, one of the last huge canyons in Europe, which are completely untouched, with a wonderful and rich biodiversity. And nobody knows why they are doing this, because this hydropower would not produce huge amount of electricity. I don't know how to say that in English. So why they are doing this? And they are doing this in spite of the protests of biologists, environmentalists. 200 scientists from Europe signed the petition and sent to the Montenegrin government to not do this. But in spite of all of this, they are still intending to build this huge hydropower on this protected part of Montenegro. And now with the support of the EU, because some EU countries are intending actually to build this power, this huge hydropower, to cement the canyon, who is actually having, who is gaining from this are those construction companies which will build the hydropower. And I heard that the French are very much interested in this project, and they are already negotiating with the Montenegrin government regarding the project. So now we have not just the enemy in our own government, but in the EU and the EU countries. So it's really very difficult. So what actually I saw in these 35 years, since the fall of communism, that the corruption actually is destroying not just these undeveloped or less developed countries, but the big democracy actually the politicians of the big democracy are becoming more and more corrupted since there is no big enemy, there is no communism, there is no, now we are free to do whatever we want. So this is in short about situation, but I'm sure we will fight together, because we have to fight our main enemies, the corrupted rulers, not just in the Balkans, but in many other countries.
Thank you, Milka. A very good point, the one with which you conclude as also addressing this room of people sensitive to such request or suggestion. The last two countries are two member states. Again, so we return to situations where the rules are the common one and should be applied in some ways. As for Romania, we have Adrian Mihălțianu, so I made it this time, who works for PressOne, which is indeed, again, a very important media in the country with millions of readers every year. And Adrian, you can, of course, Romania is a very big country, but recently you had wildfires in areas which are supposed to be protected, Natura 2000 areas. What can you tell us about this episode and the impact of also, in general, agricultural practices that endanger environment in the country?
Well, Romania is fighting with the largest undocumented, if you want, wildfires in Europe. You also Greece or Spain or even Italy. We have around 50 to 80,000 hectares of pristine Natura 2000 burned every year. Why this happens, especially in the wetlands of the Danube Delta? Because locals are practicing a form of agriculture, a traditional agriculture, if you want, where they incendiate, they burn reeds. Of course, fires often escape any form of control. So it's not a forest that is burning, but the effects are similar on biodiversity and on everything else. It also affects the land and the water in that very important delta. For you Italians, the Danube Delta is 12 times bigger than the Po Delta. So it's pretty big and a very important biodiverse spot. We try to understand why people do this, how could we make them talk with experts and change with resilient and sustainable agricultural practices. However, this is not yet successful, and this is an ongoing battle, not only with biodiversity, but also with aridity questions. The south of Romania is one of the major, let's say, bread baskets of Europe. Romania is the main exporter of sunflower seeds, for example. And imagine that here in the Po fields, I don't know, la Campania Padana, you have bad practices, heavy use of chemicals and everything else. Well, in Romania we also have a lot of desertification. And the European Union granted 5 billion euros to Romania from 2021 to 2027, trying to actually fight against climate change, climate warming and desertification and sustain biodiversity. The problem is Romania is only absorbing around 10 to 15% of that money right now. So there are several ramifications of this climate crisis, because it is a crisis. One, the poorest areas in Romania suffer because of the climate, but also because the government doesn't absorb, the local government and the central government doesn't absorb the money that should help those people actually deal with this problem. And on the other hand, we also have projects that seem very interesting from a cohesion point of view, because we also documented this with your help. So investments in those areas, but those investments are not necessarily green. So you have a double whammy, if you want, a double problem in those areas. However, there are also, and I want to point this, also success stories. For example, Romanian prosumers, more than 100,000 people in the last 5 years, added 3 gigawatts of solar power from their pockets, but also with EU support. 3 gigawatts, that's huge, considering that Romania usually consumes around 7 to 9 gigawatts tops on a day. We still have to find a way to actually have a modern grid that's able to actually absorb this, but we show that we can increase a lot power generation without big, and costly hydropower or coal projects in a very short period of time. And last but not least, we have in Bucharest one of the most successful rehabilitation programs of old buildings. So most buildings were like G or F on the energy efficiency scale. Now they are A, because we used European funding to actually rehabilitate all these. There are thousands of palazzos, of blocks. And this in turn has a big benefit for reducing our CO2 emissions and energy consumption. So yes, we can do things. We have a lot of successful stories, but we could be much higher on this scale if the government would absorb European funding.
The issue of your absorption capacity is indeed an issue in Italy too. What I did not tell anyone from the beginning is that we had a closed-door meeting this morning to which they all refer to so far, in which we exchange experiences among different countries and journalists with different stories, also in order to work more together, considering how the environment is really not something that is limited to borders, and where therefore collective action is particularly important. We conclude with Slovenia, and Maja Prijatelj from Nova Gorica, from Delo in Slovenia, who as well has a long experience with being a leading environmental journalist, and Delo being indeed probably the most important or among the most important media in the country. Maja, what can we say about floods, which is another very important element in environmental protection, because Slovenia had as well in 2023 a very big issue with floods. And what about farming in relation to the risk of floods?
Hello, everybody. Yes, at the workshop in the morning with my colleagues, I realized that journalists and people living in the countries of the Balkans and Eastern Europe have much bigger environmental problems than we in Slovenia. But nevertheless, Slovenia has the image to be a green country, but a lot of people mistakenly think that green is sometimes also clean, which is not always true. We also have many environmental problems. I would say I would maybe divide them between old, new and upcoming, and for the old one I would say they are mostly connected with our industrial past and the pollution that was caused by let's say the lack of transparency, lack of environmental laws and legislation, and we are all still paying for this. We have one of the biggest environmental problem in Soča Valley is the pollution with asbestos. Still many people die from asbestosis, and there were no lawsuits against the company. And on the other part of the country, we have the pollution with the, how is it called, with heavy metals. The soil is polluted, and they're investing big money into this sanation, which is not always successful, and it has also limits with the agriculture, with the quality of life in general. So in every part of our small, beautiful, green country, we have many environmental problems from the past. And now the current problems are connected to the, let's say, waste we had many fires at the waste sites in the recent years, and they were not explored properly. So there's a high doubt that they ignited these fires because they wanted to get rid of the waste. There's also a big discussion about building to become self-sufficient in waste management, and our major in Ljubljana, in capital city, wants to build incineration factory, and they also planning to build the one in two another ones in different cities. But already the air, the rate of the pollution of the air is really high in Slovenia. So these are the current ones, and we also have many problems connected to rivers, with the pollution of rivers. So we are similar to other Balkan countries, but the problem that where the past and the future came together were the floods in 2023. They damaged almost 2/3 of the country. It was the biggest catastrophe, the biggest, let's say, environmental catastrophe for Slovenia in the recent 35 years. Actually, we cannot say it's the nature catastrophe because it was caused by the warming sea. There was so many rainfall that was caused by the very high very high temperatures of the Adriatic Sea, and the damage from these floods was really huge. Our government needed to change the budget. It will impact our country for many years. And I must say that we also have good experience with rebuilding parts of the country at the beginning, but now when the long-term program is being planned, we see that we are making the same mistakes again as in the past. So the damage from the floods was so high because people built their houses, factories in the area where the rivers were flowing. So this is somewhere happening again. So we see that our memory is quite short. But actually we're a small country, and there's this conflict of which part of the economy or which part of the economy has to have the preference against another. So I would say that for Slovenia, and this is also valid for Italy and also the rest of the Central Europe, our biggest main problem is climate change. So this is the main problem, unless we get some nuclear bombing from I don't know which country. So we need to work on it. We need to adapt more quickly. We need to adapt faster because we are doing it too slow. Just one number from Slovenia. Slovenia has the highest environmental damage from the let's say extreme weather events per capita in Europe. It's 8,700 euros per capita. And this should be the warning for our politicians, for our people who plan our future. But unfortunately, the same as other countries that have populist or maybe right-centered government, Slovenia doesn't have. Slovenia, let's say, we are quite, let's say, climate change and adaptation as the first priority, and this is really bad. And as a journalist, I don't think. I mean, journalists cannot be the only ones who can change this, but we can contribute.
Thank you very much. It's indeed true that as we discussed this morning, journalism can make a big difference because it sensitizes people, and then of course the issue is to what extent then society reacts. But we have seen also, that we saw also transnational reaction. Let's say the case of the Vjosa River, but also the anti-power plants movement in the region got a lot of international support, and it was successful precisely because of that, I would say, because it was a combination of local and international pressure to support. So somehow it's very important to sensitize also other countries outside the Balkans or outside the region to take the responsibility. I would like to leave the floor to the questions in the room because I'm sure there is a lot of interest that emerges from there. Se avete delle domande mi piacerebbe far passare il microfono, che ne ho uno qui, ne vedo una là di domanda, un'altra da questa parte. Chiedo ai colleghi, grazie Chiara o Roberta, allora la domanda è là in mezzo, la prima, in cima direi. Purtroppo questa volta non sono in grado di riconoscere, anche perché la lontananza non mi aiuta. Arriva il microfono, grazie. Se si presenta ci fa un favore, grazie.
Thank you very much. I'm Sophie Godes. I'm intervening in the next panel. And there is a notion that comes out from all your presentation, and especially it's something that struck me when Aleksandar was presenting. But it really links to all your presentation, and also it's going to link to our next panel, is the notion of impunity. And in the end, the autocratic, flawed nature of democracy in most of the countries of the regions also enable environmental crimes and unwillingness or incapacity to address the issues raised by climate change. And I mean, I was thinking also about Jablanica and Zenica. I have friends in Kakan where their parents, they can't drink the water because they know it's polluted, but there is no official data on that. And which leads to my second question. To what extent do you think that there is a problem from the top linked to this impunity, lack of transparency, collusion, but also the lack of information, and to what extent grassroots initiatives to provide better information on the topic could also help bring some change from the bottom? Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. Sorry for not recognizing you from far away. I will give the floor to all of you, but I'll follow the alphabetical order that if you accept. I would add to your point on impunity, speaking specifically about Albania, with whom we start. There was also some kind of positive sign recently. I remember talking to NGOs representatives that would say the important reform in the judiciary in Albania had a very positive impact for civic activists in the field, because they could take to court their cases. So the floor is yours.
Yes, I mean, we have also had positive impacts on the environmental issues. It's not like the panorama is very black. There are some communities that they have been very resistant in their causes. I can mention here Zaljocha, that's a community that has been protesting for several years, and they are very, let's say, they are very powerful, and other communities see them as lead, and they take example of them. And this is very inspirational for me as a journalist, following them. We have another case of a fabric, Inca, that is named, that the people who are there, they cannot live because the pollution is so big that, let's say, the people there cannot breathe, it stinks. And for the moment, the institution, they have given order to close this company, but still the institution are not implementing the laws, and they are still letting this company works. So, I mean, there are communities who are doing a lot of works, and they are bringing the cases till a certain point, but it never goes successfully. There are very rarely cases, like I mentioned before, Viosa, that take a very big audience internationally, but small cases are on their way. So I think media, organization, NGOs, we always trying to support them with our editorial stuff, but that's all that we can do. The other part is that the resistance should not stop, and sometimes we should mention that behind these companies there are like big businessmen, and they use their influence to stop the resistance, but sometimes it works, sometimes it's not, and it's very important that the people be very decisive in their mission, and the importance is also that NGO can do more to bring information. And one other point that we were discussing before in the closed meeting that we had, there are some cases that we see an international challenges happening in another country, and it can lead to enthusiastic in the region. So there are some residents now in Shushitsa that they are inspiring by the cases of some women I mentioned before. I don't remember exactly the name of the place, that they were resisting for 500 days, and they were they were staying inside an umbrella, and the resident of my country knows about the story now, and they were trying to implement it as a strategy. So also exchanging experience is a good thing.
Thank you very much, Elira. Aleksandar, what about Bosnia-Herzegovina?
Actually, I would just want to answer shortly about this question or opinion, what this lady said. The situation is simply, like in mafia language, no body, no murder. No data, no air pollution. And many in many towns in Bosnia, we have result of air pollution is like in China, if you compare, and much more than. For example, media that I think is in past 3 years we put more than 100 sensors all around all Bosnia. This is purple air sensors, and we in real time you can see how huge is pollution. And what's happened? Politicians from local communities judging us about this, who is paid for that, we are traitor, we are someone who want to destroy our society. And this is what you say on second opinion. We have democracy, but without manual. People recognize that we have problem with air pollution, but cannot understand how can we organize and fighting against this, because our politics share fear, distrust, untolerate politics and messages, because in this way of manipulation can really be in politics without any responsibility. That means that corruption is the main word for every problem in our society. And what is, I must say again, European Union must have decision, does to want to be cooperate with it. This small but honest forces, activists who want to clear society in every way, in politics and air pollution. This is same strategy, or to be partner with our oligarch politician who want to really destroy not only our country but every other country, neighborhood, and Europe actually. This is true.
Zornitsa, what about Bulgaria? What would be your answer to this impunity?
Well, in Bulgaria, it's pretty much the same. You asked if the problem comes from the top. Yeah, the problem comes from the top. The government, when there's a public pressure, there's an action, but this action is like not the thing we need. And when the public pressure stops, the action stops. The former prime minister of Bulgaria used to say that he doesn't like people to protest under his windows. So if there's a protest, he just says, do something. And when the protest stops, we stop doing it. And I think that, as Aleksandar said, the problem is corruption, because the government, local or national government, they act in order that the party that is ruling to profit, or the circle of businessmen around it, and not the people.
What if, Adrian, is it impunity, or is corruption related to impunity in Romania, or because corruption is somehow also an ordinary phenomena everywhere, but the point is to what extent it is so.
Yes, and by far. And I would say that even a lot of European funded projects have done, sadly, more damage than good, because, for example, they built a garbage dump up in the mountains in the north of the country. It was according to all the European standards, but it was in a pristine, it's just like you would build it on the Stelvio Pass up. And I'm not kidding, it's like this, the road up there, and then you find the garbage dump on the top. So it's a combination of corruption, but it's not necessarily a top-down corruption. To answer your question, it permeates all the structures on the regional level, and there, even if we have a reformist government, and that's the problem, we had some reformist government, they were unable to do anything to those regions because those regions were very supportive of their own barons, like we call them, These are like a feudal system. So it's a very difficult to find a solution that doesn't involve those communities. It's not about changing the government keeps changing. It's actually activating those communities to actually care for what happens around them. And that's more difficult to do than to combat corruption, sadly.
Milka, my alphabetical order got a bit confused, so what about Montenegro?
Well, but I think the impunity actually is a key word here. The rule of law is crucial. But in all these countries, and especially in Montenegro, we have really a real problem with the rule of law. And for example, it's so many evidence against some figures, not just politicians, but the big businessmen, that they break the law, but they never actually take any responsibility for that. They can easily do whatever they want. The courts are not doing much to stop them. This is the key problem.
Maja, what about Slovenia?
I would say that if looking into this industrial pollution from the past, the perpetrators were never found, or the companies went bankrupt, and they didn't have any successor, so they left the garbage and toxic materials to the next generations. And the current problems, it often happens that, I don't know, when the river gets polluted by unknown thing, it is really difficult, or maybe when the fire breaks the garbage yard, it is never really examined up to the, I mean, it is never really discovered, the main cause is not discovered. So it is really difficult to file a suit, and there were really we don't have a lot of precedents about these cases. So I don't remember if in any case there was somebody that was that got jail sentence or some kind of money punishment. This didn't happen, but I don't think that in Slovenia the biggest problem is I mean, the impunity is problem, but another problem is that the government, whichever left, right, we have this kind of division for after the Second World War, always listens to the capital. So the capital always win unless people like the civil society raises their voices. And in few cases this happened, and in these cases these people, the civil society, succeeded to win against certain companies in Slovenia, and they demanded that they implement stronger measurements from the emissions, and so they succeeded. But I know it's really difficult to establish civil society for every problem. In these cases were really acute. People were dying, so they had to do something. But it's really difficult to put the whole pressure on the civil societies or NGOs.
Indeed, this is certainly one of the issues. There are too many expectations to the weakest of the actor in society, which is organized civil society. There was a question there, Francesco Martino, and if there are any other questions later on, please raise your hands. Okay, one below. Yeah, Francesco.
Yeah, Francesco Martino from Osservatorio Balcani Caucaso, Trans-Europa. Thanks a lot for bringing up so important study cases about environmental issues in the Balkans. My question is related especially with one case which Luisa brought up in the beginning of our discussion, that is the famous or infamous Memorandum of Understanding with the Serbian government about lithium extraction. So my question would be, I think mainly addressed to Aleksandar and Milka, maybe to Elira too, how much this has been discussed in your own societies through the media and in public space, and how much do you think has affected the perception of the European Union as a honest ally to the civil society when it comes to fighting for protecting the environment in your own countries. So, thank you.
Thank you for this question. I'm very critical regarding the EU, especially because of the lithium, and not just lithium, but we have recently the huge protests of the Serbian students in Belgrade because of the the corruption and killing of 16 people in Novi Sad. Actually, they have no support from the EU because EU is cooperating with Vučić. And I think the main reason why they are cooperating with Vučić because it's actually the lithium. So the interest regarding the lithium, especially the German involvement in all of this. So I must say it's a lot of disappointments regarding the EU and most recently regarding the US. And the feeling is that actually those who are fighting for the environment and for democracy in our countries are not having any more the support from the official structures in the EU and now, of course, in the US with Trump.
I think Milka explained many things, but I think, and I think in previous, I said that this is pretty contradictory of some statement especially for some European country in the Bosnia, who is always support NGO sector in post-Dayton Agreement period, to be to sitting in silence now when some local municipality organize judiciary process against activists. And the main reason for that is because this country or investors for this country direct invest in some specific environmental issue that we can say that we don't have, first of all, enough information. And when we ask for information like media, we don't have chance to have info about that. Maybe good explanation for this issue is that our president of entity of Republic of Srpska last year have campaign. The main message was we don't. This is our land, something like that. We're fighting for that. Nobody can take that from us. And few days ago he said, if Trump want our land, I give it to him.
And Trump wants everything.
Yeah, that is how. And you look at. Can you imagine between these two statement activists, independent journalists? It's pretty difficult because we lose some partners, not only with donations. We lose some partners with ideology. Doesn't matter is left or right. Ideology of ruling of law, society without corruption, to encourage activism. Actually, now we have situation that, for example, in Serbia you have this lithium issue, but in the part of Bosnia and especially in Republic of Srpska, you have some process of mining of lithium, and I think the good thing is that we have big demonstration in Serbia, and somehow wave of this demonstration is now in the Bosnia especially about this lithium question.
There was a question on the top of the room. Yes, please introduce yourself. I really can't figure out who you are from here.
It's okay.
No, maybe Kapetanović, right?
Yes.
Incredible.
Yes, hello, I'm Aida Kapetanović. I will also talk in the following panel, and I'm so happy to hear your discussion. I first of all want to thank you. I really think your work is extremely precious. I have been conducting research on the struggles against hydropower plants in Bosnia and Herzegovina and in Serbia, and now at the regional level. So if it was not thanks to your work, I would have not reached a lot of information and a lot of insights, and also the names and the voices of the activists. So just please continue to do this. I wanted to ask you, first of all, if you would like to share some insights and your position about this actual existence already of grassroots regional cooperation among even the smallest local communities that are supporting each other, and they have some potential maybe in sharing knowledge, in sharing experiences, but also in building a different narrative of the region. One, as we said before, as what's said during the discussion, that the rivers and the nature doesn't know any border. So people that are protecting nature actually are together. And also, if this can also help them build some sort of grassroots forms of defense against allegations, against the slap allegations that the investors bring against the activists. And another question is whether you also in your work found some of the contradictions that come in terms of nature devastation from so-called ecotourism. So the alternative of extractivist projects then becomes exploiting nature with massive tourism. We have the example of many national parks, the example of the Una National Park that is being devastated by this ecotourism. So where are the problems there, and can we find some possibilities, some solutions for that?
Who would like to start?
Maybe I can say a couple of the words. I think, first of all, that this activism and this grassroots movements can really help the region, not just to protect the nature, but to democratize the country and to strengthen anti-nationalistic rhetorics and movements of our politicians, because they are always using the nationalistic rhetorics to manipulate and to stay in power. So this is one of the tools since the 90s of most of the politicians in the Balkans. So I really believe that these movements regarding the environment issues are to say step to much more cooperation between us and within the countries and among the different countries. What was your last question? I forgot. I had something to say.
Building a different narrative?
Sorry?
Building a different narrative?
Ecotourism. That's what I wanted to say. That it's really, I mean, the problem in, I think, all the countries, tourism and nature protection. And there is no ecotourism, unfortunately, and it is actually very rare. Usually people are using ecotourism to build and to cement and to build in the national parks. It's happened in Montenegro, it's happened in Croatia, it's happened, I believe, in all over. So we need, I think, first of all, a careful and reliable, how to say, the spatial plannings, the new regulations, and the law. And here is the rule of law as well very important. So I think in most of the countries we are coming from, the spatial planning is a real problem.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Particularly the last question about ecotourism. We have a case in Bulgaria in one of the, I think, the biggest national park and one of the most beautiful places in Bulgaria. It's called Seven Rila Lakes. Maybe 15 years ago, some investor constructed a cable car to the lakes, And now in summer, there are no buildings, no resort. There are only a few huts, 2 or 3. And now in summer, thousands of tourists go there, and they're destroying this nature. The lakes they're becoming swamps. They're not blue anymore. Fish is dying. And the government does a little just to help. They made trails where tourists can walk. There is a ban to enter the lakes, but nobody is there to see if tourists enter the lakes. And maybe for my children or for my grandchildren, this place won't be the same.
Well, for ecotourism, now in my country we have a different perspective because Albania is just starting this recent year to be more famous, let's say, in the region or in Europe. And our Prime Minister is selling the part that you see Italia now are choosing Albania to pass the summer and not Italy because here is more cheap vacation, and it's doing this propaganda that now our coast, especially the south, is more famous and it can be used from different European to have a cheap vacation. Meanwhile, it's doing it more hard for our citizens to go and to access the south because the prices maybe can be more comfortable for people from Italy or other countries. But let's say for average medium payment of an Albanian, it's very expensive to go and to have access in this part of the sea. Also, in the same times, they are trying to attract rich tourism, let's say, because, like I mentioned before, without any transparency, they have given a very important island of Albania, Sazan, to the son-in-law of Donald Trump, Kushner, who had now a very a visual plan of doing a rich resort in Sazan Island, and it was just something that our citizens have known it through media, because he had done an interview to Bloomberg and has mentioned it, his plan, and they are trying to also have this rich tourism and doing more and more places inaccessible for the citizens. So I think ecotourism come always with the cost of the real citizens, how much they can access and enjoy their country. And I mean, it's different from how the tourists see it, and is different how the citizens of country feel it. Thank you.
I could also add something about the relationship between ecotourism, cohesion funding, developing of the poorest areas in Europe, and they are all interlinked, even with energy. You have these areas that are usually up in the mountains or in the wetlands. You have people that already live there for generations. They are not so many, but they are usually very poor, and this is the case everywhere in Europe, not only in the Eastern Europe. And cohesion funds want to actually bring them prosperity because they feel left behind, and usually they vote for politicians that say, well, you deserve more and so forth, usually on the far right. These funds, however, even under the form of ecotourism, or even green energy generation, because we also have some wind parks in the mountains, they have an ecological impact. It's a very difficult equation, and you have to involve the local community, experts, which are experts in energy, but are also ecological experts, anthropologists, a lot of people, not only politicians, to understand how you can serve that community better. Otherwise, if you look only at the clients, because it's also this discussion. For example, in the Danube Delta, you have around 15,000 inhabitants in that protected area, but they are very poor. Basically, they live on the water, like in New Orleans or other, wet areas. Now you have several 100,000 tourists that want to visit this area. They can do it only by boat. You cannot drive there. So how can you balance the desire to actually discover this area, to develop it, but on the same thing to be sustainable and resilient, because the climate change there. It's not so easy. And us as journalists, we can just look at the data, look at what the experts said, but also what the local communities want, and then somehow put them together and start a dialogue. It will take time. What we are seeing right now, we are seeing that a lot of EU investment is made to actually bring those people up from their very poor state. A lot of funds are mismanaged, and it's not only about corruption, it's also about sheer incompetence and lack of know-how. So a lot of them are not absorbed, but even those that are absorbed are not absorbed in a good manner. You end up with a lot of so-called green agrotourism businesses that dump their water in the clean water and so forth. So it needs to be a very strong discussion at the European and regional level to see how these funds are sometimes doing more harm than good.
If no one else raised his hands, I would just draw a couple of conclusions. I think, of course, we cannot think of solving easily the contradiction between capitalism and development and natural protection. But we know that at least some provisions the European Union developed had positive impact here and there, where local communities were empowered, where the rule of law was stable. There are experiences all around. Of course, none of them have found a complete solution. It can become elitist tourism versus, democratic one. So, solutions are not necessarily easy, but for sure, the problem remains in those contexts where local communities are not involved, where their money is lost because the absorption capacity of local administration is too low, but for sure where the rule of law is so weak that there is impunity. We cannot think of any situation where there will be no corruption, but it is fundamental to be able to punish at least the largest amount if the rule of law works. But in many of these cases, it is certainly a weak context that does not allow the production. But the worst part, I think, that has emerged from the very beginning of our conversation is this loss of credibility of the European Union in relation to candidate countries. Because it was such an important point of reference for so long, we should ask it to return to be for us and for them, because we cannot just forget about our environmental context. But we also probably should be more aware of regaining a sense of the common good that we all should look for, strive for together transnationally, regaining the value and the pride for our action in favor and defense of the common good. Not asking intrinsically European institutions to do the whole work, but not even having the illusion that alone social movement or civil society can be the only actor in the field. So the challenges are very many. We'll try to follow them and follow them more and more often together with collaborative journalism, collaborative research, exchange between scholars and journalists, which we as OBCT think is a fundamental element. Civil society, NGOs, journalists and academia, among others. Necessarily, the more we cooperate, the better for our future. So I give you the good news that you have a break in between. We hope you go downstairs and have a